Sam, I think people are going to want to know, how does somebody become Sam Miller? How does that happen? And so I'd really like to have you tell your story. Go back as far as you like, because people are genuinely curious. When someone can take an idea that is as cool as um, the Proteus, whatever sparked that, and turn it into not only a product, but also into a business, and a business that is having impact on the lives of young athletes, and in many arenas, not just young athletes, but and fitness and so on. And I think in a lifelong kind of way. So take us back as far as you like, and really tell us the story up to now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. This has been a journey indeed. This started as an interest that turned into a passion, and then an obsession. And then, aside from my family, it's become very much my life. Um, and quick additional context to the great intro that you provided, Sandy, before I get into the journey on what it is that Proteus does and what we've built. We've built Proteus provides a comprehensive physical assessment in minutes, specifically focused on the measurement of power. Power being basically your ability to uh, use your strength to generate speed. It's one of the most important emerging biomarkers that exists. And you do an assessment on Proteus. It's a hardware and a software. It delivers insights, trends, actionable reports. And this is evolving into like true exercise prescription. Um, and we've got numerous patents across the board from hardware, software, and the like. What it does is it measures strength and power for any movement, not just like the up and down movements like a squat, but rotation, functional movement, multiplanar, the way you move like in sports and in real life. Um, so, and this lets us capture data that no one else can, which is proving to be incredibly valuable for health and human performance for any demographic. So that is the kind of the broad strokes of what it is that I'm doing today and what Proteus does. How we got here, I guess I'll go back to my growing up in the suburbs of Boston. I was an athlete, played every sport. Um, my main focus was soccer, but I played literally every sport. I had a really painful condition in my knee that was called osteochondritis dissecans, and it put me in and out of physical therapy and training constantly from age 9 through age 15. And so I became intimately familiar with the rehabilitation process and training for sport, and sport specificity. And along the way, deeply frustrated with a lot of the things that I was experiencing. Um, I think a moment that stuck for me was, I remember walking out of a training session with a teammate who was recovering from a back injury. It was actually an oblique tear. Uh, and I, with my knee, we both had a sheet of paper that had the exact same training program on it.
You come out of college, you go to work for this engineering firm. You have a side hustle of trading real estate in Florida. And at what did you work in the engineering firm while you were incubating Proteus, or what how did that all unfold?
Yeah, amongst these side hustles, while I was working at this, in this engineering firm, I Proteus became one of those, and it was started as an exploratory thing. So it was like, doing a lot of just voracious, just consuming constantly all these different materials from, a business and startups to health and human performance and medical research and all these things that I just was fascinated by. And and then that evolved into looking at this seriously to the point where I started flying down to where my dad had actually been keeping this. He kept this old prototype for, this is 20 years later. Um, disassembled in basically a garage in Georgia where he was. And I was flying down from New York to Georgia every weekend and trying to learn what he was doing and trying to reverse engineer and figure things out. He unfortunately he had suffered a series of strokes and some other health issues
Sorry.
that kind of made, thank you, that kind of made his participation like less useful, and which would have, so it was kind of had to figure it out myself. And then I think that evolved to a certain point where I had enough pieces in place where I said, I think I have something here, but I need to be able to focus on it fully, and it got up enough, I guess, confidence to leave my job. And fortunately, I had my wife, who I always say is like my silent co-founder, has always been one of the biggest cheerleaders of this. So, had her support, and which is incredibly important in starting a business, and and kind of took the plunge. And it took a lot longer than I envisioned. That's kind of what I hear constantly is probably normal, I guess, in some regards, but that was definitely true with us.
How does Sam's superpower meet with life, and work and so on? What was the worst job you ever had, and why?
It's a good question. I think the worst job I ever had. So right before I was at this engineering firm that I mentioned earlier, that I was at for 8 years, I was with a smaller company in the same space in South Boston, and it was basically an entry level engineering a job. That was probably the worst job I've ever had. I really enjoyed that job, but a lot of aspects of it. But I think any time that I'm in a position where I don't have responsibility, don't have much to do, and not able to solve problems or do something that involves some creative thinking, I'm just not happy. If I'm not doing, much, or doing something I'm not passionate about, I thrive in high stress, high stakes, solving problems, and I crave that kind of, workload and responsibility. So simply because there wasn't a lot to the job, that was probably my least favorite job. Still a valuable experience, but that would definitely fall in the category of my least favorite.
What would your advice be to any of us, that is looking to find that click? You walked away from that first job, and it's interesting that you said, and I'm not surprised knowing you, hey, that first job wasn't great, but I learned a lot and I liked it.
Yeah. I think two things come to mind. One is I'll share I think one of my favorite quotes ever, which is sometimes when you think you've been buried, you've actually been planted, is one of my favorite quotes for a couple of reasons, but mainly I think being able to view failures, especially fast failures, and if you call it a failure, just to learn it, right? Or negative experience, even, as something that's not necessarily negative, it's just narrowed down, right? For you in a helpful way, what, you want to work towards to figure out what makes you click, right? Because,
Yeah.
it could be anything, right? And so there's a lot of different options, and it's going to be overwhelming to think about, well, I could do all these different things, or and so you want to be able to get kind of this fast feedback and figure out what does or doesn't work. And I think that comes through having a variety of different experiences. So I love that quote. And then the other thing the other thing I would say is, like, get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, I think if you're uncomfortable, it means that you're challenged, right? And if you're challenged, it means that you're growing. And you think about it like a muscle, right? You have to strain it, right? It is an uncomfortable experience, right? When you are lifting a weight and you feel that burn, it's the same thing. That's what ultimately is needed to trigger growth. To me, those are some of the most important things to be considering, thinking on, working on, and incorporating into, I would say, to kind of everyday life in the pursuit of figuring out what is your click.